5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow, coming to you live from the in-pit lane corporate headquarters here beyond the suburban curtain of Grand Prix City, Melbourne. What a big weekend we've had in motorsport up at Mount Panorama for the Bathurst 12 Hour. I was lucky enough to be up there for pretty much since Thursday night, and I was over there on the weekend. Picked up a few interesting things, not just about the Bathurst 12 Hours, but of course supercars as well, because there was a little bit of supercar news that happened over the weekend, or on Friday in particular, and boy, did that set the cat amongst the pigeons. We'll talk about a little bit about that, I imagine, a little bit later on in the program as well. Also, speaking of which, I was there by myself. Doc was down chasing bicycles around Geelong, but he does have some. He did leak some news. He picked up a bit of local gossip, which we might sort of let you know about a little bit later on, about a very popular local racer and his big plans for 2025. But joining us this week, well, as we mentioned, we've got alongside of me is Peter Johnson, our regular Formula One tragic and in-pit lane floor manager. We've got Craig, Doc Latigo, and all the way from Queensland, where I imagine it's sunny and bright and lovely, with not a drop of rain. It's Mark Jones. G'day, how are you guys?
Very well, thanks, Brett. Yourself?
Hi Pete, hello MJ, haven't seen you for a while.
Because I said, because you've been down at the Cadell Evans, you've come off of a couple of weeks with the Australian Open, and down at the Cadell Evans event, which I knew nothing about. How did it all go? I haven't spoken to you since the weekend, so how did it all go?
Oh, well, first of all, I think I better announce to everyone a big happy birthday to Brett, which was also last week.
That was last week, yes. And thank you to everybody who did send me birthday wishes as well, and thank you to Christian and for dropping a birthday drink on the table in front of me once I wandered into Bathurst on Thursday night. So that was very much appreciated as well. So thank you very much for those birthday greetings. But yeah, I was on the way. I'd only just arrived in Bathurst, and Doc gave me a ring and said that he was that he was down at the Cadell Evans event, and you ran into a local motorsport character and a friend of the program. What can you tell us? Can we reveal anything?
Oh well, I actually ran into some fantastic people. So if my lips aren't keeping up with my speech, I do apologise. I've come home to it, like Brett said, we've got some extenuated circumstances around our households here. Things are anyway. Cutting a long story short, I was advised earlier in the week that a certain Formula One driver might be hanging out in the vicinity of the Geelong port while we were down there, and the I was not surprised because the partner of Tiffany Cromwell, who actually won at the stages over in the Santos over there in South Australia, in the Adelaide Hills, won a particular leg of the event there, and so we were actually on our group chat we have between our guys. I put up a few of the social media posts by this hearsay Formula One driver, and he's very, as Brett says, we're all, if you're not an Australian fan of this particular blonde-haired mulleted bogan, then you're not Australian. So he's been here. I think they had Christmas. Tiffany and this hearsay guy had Christmas here, but they were definitely here for New Year's Eve and from there on. And I was doing some VIP stuff earlier. I think it was on the Friday, and hanging out. And anyway, I look across, and here's this gentleman just completely on his own, just leaning on the fence like I was to a certain extent, with his his phone up and taking some video footage of the riders going past. And the blonde mullet caught my eye, and I thought, yeah, that's him. So I might let it go, mind my own business. Didn't hassle him. Kept going about my duties for the next few minutes. Anyway, then he sort of stepped back and They had what's called a people's ride down there, which is the lead up to the women's event there at lunchtime, and 3,500 people packed into the main street of Geelong there, and it was sardines. This is a couple of hours beforehand, and they'd all been given this jersey, which was like yellow and blue and really bright colours and TAC all over it, which was supported, which is fantastic. The government threw a lot of money behind it this year, and hopefully do so in the future. And this blonde-haired Mullins Bogan was wearing that particular shirt as well too. That was leaning on it, but I sort of had a harder look around the corner and make sure his face matched the social media post that he loves throwing up while he's in Australia, and sure it was. So I let him finish what he was doing and didn't hassle him, and no one else seemed to be reacting to him or noticed him or even, spotted him. So he walked over to his bike and he was just had his hand on his bike seat, and he was just, how you push your bike along when you've got a high profile, expensive $10,000 Porsche bike. I don't think his was Porsche. And he's pushing it along, probably Mercedes because they do make them. And he was on his own. And I said, "Hello, excuse me, Valtteri." And he said, "Yes." I said, "Big fan. Can I grab a quick selfie?" He said, "Yeah, sure." So I got the selfie with him. He was he'd been on the people's ride and a bit hot and that sort of stuff. And he was off to his hotel room after probably taking some pics of Tiffany. So I just said a hi, got a selfie, talked for about 30 seconds and let him go on his way. And he was, no one knew any different.
The interesting thing is that Mercedes, last year he put out that famous, his Valtteri Bottas naked calendar. Mercedes, as he's working for them now, have said 9. Not happening this year, Valtteri. Thank you very much. We appreciate it's a bit of fun and goes to charity and all the rest of it, but the bottom line is no. So that's the end of that. So perhaps after he's finished his time with Mercedes, we'll get the Valtteri Bottas nude naked calendar special edition and all that. But yeah, he's a really good bloke. But he wasn't the only motorsport connection you had on the weekend, was he?
So I'll make this a shorter version. I was also lucky enough to be staying at the same accommodation as a gentleman, a good friend of mine now, because we spent the week together. And his name is Dylan Sunderland, and now he's an ex-professional rider for a few teams over in Europe. I think he said he spent 6 years riding the two-wheeled unmotorised version, and we had a bit of time catching up on the Monday. We were staying at the same accommodation. He is Scott Sunderland's nephew, and he'd been flown down from Queensland by Scott to drive the Merc, the league car and you've got probably 30, 40 cars. And Dylan's a fantastic guy. He'd flown in from the Goldie on the Monday, like I drove up there on the Monday morning as well too, to avoid the heat. And so we killed some time in some aircon accommodation and had a chat. And he's fantastic. He's on, if you are friends with me on Facebook, you'll see that post. So he was able at one stage later in the week before, I think it was the Saturday afternoon, needed to go put fuel into the $150,000 Mercedes league car that needed driving next day for the men's race. He might have been a little bit short on fuel. So he texted me and said, "I'm going, the car's getting washed right now." They had to get washed every day, etc. Going to the fuel station, jump in and took me for a spin that. We avoided some speed cameras. Nothing illegal, of course. And then I was able to get one. I was given one of those cars as a drive car. What's today? It's a blur. Yesterday, I had one of those. I'll put up a couple of pics of that, and I'll do it tonight now. So I was given one of those, and I was allowed to drive it from the Sands all the way back into Geelong for over half an hour. So I gave that a boot and found 0 to 60 was very, very quick off a red light as well too. That was a lot of fun. And the last one, absolute friend of the show, been on it in pit lane in the last few years, always gives lots of time, was
as
one of the stars.
His father?
Yeah, absolutely, and a huge support base that they are, a great privateer team. Zach Suter and I ran into each other this time earlier in the week. Mercedes were doing a display at the Steam Packet Village, which is a huge part of the foreshore on the Geelong grounds there, and he was there for promotional for Mercedes. So he immediately threw me a cap, and I said, "Can I wear one of those?" And I wore a Mercedes cap all week instead of the Cattell cap. And yeah, he was great. He let the cat out of the bag. They've bought the Love GT4 Mercedes Benz, and they got them stashed away in their looks like a warehouse, dusty garage at the moment. They're working on those and getting one up to spec for themselves, ready to race this year. So I think you'll see Zach. I'm not sure if he'll do some cameos in TCR or completely leave it with the tough lift Audi, or they will just run the GT4. And the second car, because they bought both of them off them, are going to bring it up to spec as well and lease it out to somebody else who wants it. So there's a bit of news on the...
They were very successful cars. That was the cars that Sam Brabham was driving, and they did very well, particularly down at Phillip Island. Those cars were very competitive. And GT4, there was a lot of talk about GT4 at Bathurst on the weekend, in terms of new teams coming, new cars coming. We've got a couple of Toyota Supras are on the way. There's at least one, if not two, extra Mustangs coming. So there's a number of GT4 cars just around the corner. Unfortunately, they weren't at Bathurst. I think that was one of the things that the problem is that the cost of running cars at Bathurst is just, it's a case of if you can run Bathurst or you can run the championship. Most people can't do both. So unfortunately, we didn't see a huge amount of people there. I'm not sure where that sound is coming from at the moment. Actually, that unless it's raining somewhere, probably is. But anyway, it was
I'll put an air
Bathurst.
conditioner next week. I do have a window open to let some air through because my house is so stuffy and the air conditioner.
Oh, I know, wasn't it? I mean, got home to 38 degrees yesterday and opened the door, and it had been locked up like a hermetically sealed for the last 5 days. And yeah, boy, it was walking into an oven, all right. And yeah, very unpleasant. But anyway, as I said, was up at Bathurst. A great win by Team WRT and for BMW 1-2. If you have any doubt as to how important this race is to the internationals, you only had to see the reaction from both from the three winning drivers and also the three second place drivers, including Valentino Rossi, who was just over the moon about getting second at Bathurst. He said it was the best result he's had on four wheels, and he was delighted. And he's already said there's certainly stories around that Team WRT may not be back next year, simply because they've just got so much else on their plate. But Valentino has already said, he said during the presser that yes, if I've got any say in it, whatever we need to do, I will be back. I will definitely be back. I want to race here again. I want to win this race. I love this race. I'm having a ball. And he certainly did. So that was a great thing to see on the weekend.
And he's got the Oxford booked, the top level of the Oxford hotel booked in for his birthday every year. Anyway, I think that's a standing order.
The thing is, he didn't this year. The shakedown guys got hold of it for their party, because obviously they'd moved the date back again. So Valentino's birthday is either next week or the week after. So, but yes, that was very funny last year. For people who don't know, we were all down the bottom with the shakedown crew and the crew from Midweek Motorsport and Richard Crail and all the people down at the Oxford for the traditional Friday night sort of get together. And upstairs was Valentino Rossi, celebrating his birthday. So a horde of people sort of stormed out into the street. And sung happy birthday to Valentino, or serenaded him on the balcony of the Oxford Hotel in Bathurst. So that's a birthday that he won't forget in a hurry. But yeah, he had a ball. Jackie Hicks was there as well. He was absolutely mobbed for the whole weekend. Incredible. Like, the guy's 80 years old. I figured out today it's been 20 years since I saw him last, and he has not changed. one little bit. I mean, it's just it's bizarre. I mean, the guy's looking so fit, and he drove the Genesis concept car there, which looked really really good on the track. They locked it away pretty quickly. I was hoping to get some close up shots. But as soon as it came in off the track, it was locked away in a garage, and no one was getting anywhere near it at all. So
Before you leave that subject, wasn't there a Mercedes wagon also doing promo laps? I heard.
no, that was another Genesis. That was the
Oh,
other and it was lovely. I did get to some shots of that. I did wander around. That's a nice car. That was a nice car as well. It was a strange meeting. I mean, it was. The numbers were down in terms of the number of entries. The numbers were down. The number of support categories was down. There were lots of periods of time when basically nothing was happening on the track, but at the same time, it felt like a much bigger event. I mean, now it really is an international event. It used to be an Australian event that international teams came to and took part in. Now it's got the feeling of this is a major international event, and that's the way it was being treated. That's the way that it was being run over the weekend. Everybody was massively busy. Caught up with a few of the drivers and people like John Hindhaugh and Eve Hewitt from there, and everybody was just saying like, "Hi, how are you? Can't stop. Got a corporate gig to go to. Can't stop. We've got a report to file." Everybody was just flat out. Even the drivers. I mean, Craig Lowndes sort of died, mate. "G'day, mate. How are you? Sorry, can't stop and chat. Got to go." And he was gone. And Tom Randall stopped for a chat for a second, and then said, and he was the same. He said, "Sorry, I'm running
oh,
late."
we missed
He
our
was
get together, Brett. We missed
yeah.
our
So
get together.
so
Oh,
uh,
that's all
so,
right.
so I spoke.
We had a really good, had a good chat with them last year. Just quickly, the crowd was 51,320 though.
Yeah, it was. It was slightly down from a couple of years ago, but up on last year. The campgrounds. They said it was a sellout. There were certainly spots available, but not many. Up the top, it was really packed. The atmosphere. I'll sort of say that in the story I'm sort of putting together. It's the only way to go and see the 12 hour, especially it's harder and harder to get up because there were so many people camping for, reasons of just traffic management and the fact that so many people want to be up there, especially for the start of the race. They've really limited the amount of access that you've got to the top of the mountain now. And so if you really want to be there for that extraordinary start on the Sunday morning at 5:45 a.m., then it really helps to be camping up there. And there was some really some amazing. I was wandering down the back of McPhillamy Park, right down to look over the other side of the mountain, which I always sort of spend some time doing. And there was just sitting there was a tent, a cheap sort of, or not a tent, a gazebo, sort of one of those cheap sort of King's camping gazebos, just sitting there. And I sort of looked around, and there was probably about a $10,000 sim rig in there with a big screen TV and all of the deal, just sitting out there in the bush, waiting to be used at the night, overlooking the vista of the other side of the mountain, as it were. And there were lots of these big screen TVs everywhere and sound
I found
systems
out
and
some
yeah.
found out some information why. So they limited the passes. You used to be able to hand it out per campsite 4, and I think that was limited this year. I didn't hear the
Yeah,
factual number that was brought back to, but because I used to get back in the day and the odd pass in before I picked up my media pass with you and go up and down the mountain from that. But what people were doing, they were giving out. People would give out their extra pass, their third or the fourth one, to someone else. Then they'd come up the mountain, but they'd sneak up all their gear in the back of the car. Even though they got searched, they'd sneak it up and they'd camp there as well too, or set up there and take spots that other people would then squeeze up, or they'd park in undesignated areas. So that's what they were doing, trying to cramp down the illegal activity, the sneaky ones that haven't paid for it, and get campgrounds up there.
Yeah, it was certainly a lot. It was a lot more. I won't say sedate, but it was a lot more organised this year. There were, it wasn't as chaotic as it has been some years in terms of like cars parked everywhere and having trouble getting around. I know I went up. I rode up in the media shuttle. And Phil, who drives the media bus, was sort of saying that, the operation's a lot smoother this year. But I had my. You'll be delighted to know, and once again, it's a feature of the story. I did have my steak sandwich from the soccer club up at the top of the mountain. The best food at Mount Panorama by far, and the cheapest, $8.50 for a steak sandwich, if you don't mind. So to the Red Devil Soccer Club, good on you guys. Really, you do a fabulous job. So that was there as well. Uh, Mark, you obviously watched it on television. I assume Pete, you watched some of it as well. What was your idea behind it all?
I, I, um, I thought it was a good race. The start of it was interesting. Um, um, uh, but I thought at the end of it, once the Ferrari had underestimated their fuel consumption and everything, the kind of the sting was taken out of it, and the Group A, is that how you say it? The Group A car, the test pattern car, when that crashed
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the chase, that the
Murrow
sting,
Angles car, yeah.
yeah,
Although Murrow wasn't at the wheel.
no, but the kind
it was
of
a
the
strange accident, that one too. I mean, it
yeah,
just
Yeah.
with Maxime Martin behind the wheel. I mean,
That's all. Yeah.
yeah. So that was strange. It was a race of high. It was a race of high attrition because everyone sort of said, "Well, look, there probably won't be." There probably won't be too many crashes because there's so few cars. There probably won't be too many crashes. Of course, we had an absolute huge one
Well, two huge,
early in the
really.
day. A couple of huge ones, but the big one, of course, and the lucky escape of the day. And cheers to Tony Grove, and hope that he'll be a
Stephen,
very, very, very sore boy right now.
yeah,
Speeding
I
is.
hope he's
And
I hope his back is not too damaged because he was
Yeah,
moving
well,
around as well. So I hope he hasn't damaged it further by moving around.
Well, that was sort of the good news. The fact is, he did get out under his own steam. So I mean, so it's not a. You would assume it's not a spinal cord injury or not nothing. There's nothing that quite that serious. But as we know, it's easy to like a couple, a few compressed discs or a couple of or fractures, some fractured vertebrae. It takes a long, long time to recover from that. So, has anybody heard the actual report? Because no,
well,
I don't think they've released
the quote.
anything.
Well, the team did put out a presser on Sunday. Sorry,
That coughing, incidentally, is brought to you by Mr. Richard Outram,
Yes.
live from country Victoria.
good evening, Rich. Yeah,
Good
the initial to quote from them, the initial tests have revealed damage to his back. However, until subsequent tests and consultation with Westmead Hospital in Sydney has taken place, we're unsure of the full extent of his injury, said the statement. We want to thank all of our fans and loyal supporters for the outpouring of love the team has received. Steve is in good spirits and looks forward to getting back to the track again. And it's
Yeah. I think
third
the
year in a
worrying
row
part.
for him. Sorry, not third year in a
Yeah,
row. 3 in the last 4 years. He's had big. He's been involved in accidents at the mountain, and
that was
he
sort
also
of
had a big one at the Dubai Autodrome in 2023.
Yeah, that was mentioned in the media centre a few times. There were a few people who sort of raised their eyebrows and were saying that, this it might be becoming a bit of a pattern. I mean, obviously he was touched by Kenny Habul. Kenny was as shocked as anybody when Kenny saw. Kenny was very upset when he saw, because as far as he was concerned, it was just a slight tap going past, and he knew that he knew Steve was off the track, but he had no idea that it was anywhere near as big as it was until he came round again and thought, oh, that was big. But then he saw the footage, and nearly collapsed, as a lot of people did. And I think I'll be really surprised if when we go back there next year, if there's not some serious catch fencing going on, which would be a great shame. But when you look at how close that thing went to going over the fence, and yes, it's not a sheer drop, but it's a big drop.
Yeah.
And compared to the in-car footage of the other big accidents, the sound of Kenny and Stephen Grove's cars touching really did sound just very slight. So it really did.
Well, there was virtually no damage to Kenny's car at all. I mean, it was just a bit of but it obviously it unbalanced Stephen, and he hit the wall hard, and it was very lucky either not to roll over and do a Bill Brown across the top of that fence, or to go even worse, over the top. And Richard, I mean, you are the only one who has gone at speed amongst us around Mount Panorama. I point out he was being chased by police at the time, but apart from that, you have been around allegedly
and didn't get caught.
Well, I did notice Steve seemed to open up as he was open up the line for who was following him. Who touched him?
Kenny Bull.
Kenny Bull. And he seemed to move over to the left as to let him through, and then closed up the gap again. I think there was some level of confusion between the two of them at that point, and it was just a slight tap, but you don't need much of a tap up there to find the fence. There is no room for error. It's a scary spot to drive around. I mean, that's why I love it. I mean, the whole track from turn 2 all the way around to the Forest Elbow. There's no spot which isn't demanding.
Phil saying that Kenny's been driven back to Melbourne. We're not allowed to fly, which I know from experience myself, because I was. That's why I didn't go to hospital in New Zealand when I had my fall over there, because I wouldn't have been able to fly. And I was warned when my back was at its worst. One of the things I was told I was not to do was fly. In fact, when I said I was going to Le Mans for that first trip, my doctor said, it is not good for you to be in a plane with because the pressure does all sorts of things to your discs. If you've got damaged discs, it can play all sorts of havoc with you, and it would be quite painful. So I'm sure I'm sure it was a very, very steady and slow drive back as well. So it sounded like obviously some sort of I would imagine some sort of compression injury there, and hopefully he gets out of that fairly well. But but what do you think about the idea of putting? Because a lot of people have said we just got to put catch fences around this thing, and it really would ruin that view.
Sad.
But
it'd be sad, but
I mean, there's not really that much of an argument against it, really. I mean, if it's a view, and
safety of the driver and the public as well too, and the flaggies.
Taken from above. Sorry.
Even at the Grand Prix with the catch fencing that they put in after the marshal was killed from the tyre, even that spoiled the view a bit. You've got to look through the fencing and
I mean that's we all hate the idea of the catch fencing, but then if a wheel's flying off and heading towards you, which which we've certainly had, if you've ever been sort of a camera op or an official or anything at the side of a track, at some stage you've ducked or swayed out of the way of something coming off a car at high speed. And you will appreciate the fact that there is a big fence there. But it's just that sheer drop over the top that if he'd have gone over onto that new walkway, the walkway probably wouldn't have done much to stop him. And from then on, I mean, down there it is a big drop, and he just would have kept going and going, and it could have been an absolute tragedy. So I think they're going. I'm sure Motorsport Australia will have a very close look at it.
Maybe even few panels probably right where have a look at. It doesn't hurt to have a look at that footage on where actually the hit was, and probably maybe some previous accidents there, and maybe just try and put a little section.
But
The interesting thing.
anyway, I was just going to say, there's nobody anyway track left at Skyline anyway. So a catch fence there isn't going to interrupt anyone's view.
No.
Correct.
It might a few camera shots, but other than that,
Yeah.
anyone
The
disagree?
camera professionals it'll be unfortunate for them, but yeah, there's the
I think that's the problem now, is that they put in these catch fences and they never sort of consider the situation for the photographers and for the media. I mean, Sandown is now at a point where there are basically 3 places you can take photos from, and that's it. So all the photos are coming from the same corners. They're all at the same angle, because that's really about the only sort of angle you can get. If you're doing video stuff, if you're doing, like, if you're covering races like we used to for the Victorian State Series and like Blendline does now, you have to have. You've got to get scaffolding, and scaffolding adds considerably to the cost and the time and the effort. And whereas if they did what they do, like in certainly at Le Mans and at Dijon, there were catch fences everywhere, but there were designated photo spots where they had sort of like a spot cut out, reinforced, so that if something did come through, it wasn't big enough so a tyre could go through or anything like that, but it was big enough so you could get a lens through there and do some shooting and get some shots. Whereas
we remember that big accident in Macau a couple of years ago, when a Formula 3 launched into it struck just above one of those reinforced camera peepholes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more common than perhaps we in Australia appreciate, that they have these little setups here and there around the motorsport world.
The interesting thing from the weekend, and I sort of put it in the thumbnail for the YouTube channel. Sophia Flush was the driver.
Yeah.
Involved with that.
You forgot to take the lift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The interesting thing over the weekend was, I mean, there were only 22 cars there. It did show. If you're watching on television, I don't think you would have sort of really noticed much at all, because you're only sort of concentrating on the main dices and the main positions anyway. So it was
such a fascinating scrap between. I mean, sure, there was less than 10 cars fighting for that lead, but it was a fascinating scrap between them, nonetheless.
And the thing was, and the KTM. Well, yeah, congratulations to those guys for getting that car home finally. They've had, as John Hindhaugh kept saying, they did have the KTM curse at Bathurst, and everything that could possibly go wrong. We did the story on them last year.
And I did it the year before too. I popped in the garage the year before, and I felt sorry for them. So
congratulations. They'll be very satisfied. And they not only did they finish, but congratulations, they actually won their class. They were the only people in their class, but they won it. So congratulations.
GT2, yes.
So
there's that phrase that you never you just don't say by default.
Yes.
Oh, and we're going to do congrats for PBs. Also, Grant Denyer did a PB in the wall racing Lambo too. He's at his age, so congratulations, little fella. Grant's a great bloke. He's always good to have a beer with too.
It's funny that what Mark is saying, first thing up, Mount Panorama is spiritual. It's funny how people there, I mean, we did when we chatted with Jules Junon last year, I mean, he said, and he used the words, I was really taken by the fact that he used this phrase, because it's one that's, regularly used by Indigenous Australians, the spirit of the place. He said, I don't know what it is, but there is, there is a spirit of the place that I can't explain. And I forget who it was, but one of the other European drivers in his first Bathurst came there. He said, there is just something about this. He said, this place has a soul. He said, I've never felt this. I've raced all of the great circuits. I've raced Le Mans and Nürburgring, of course. I've raced everywhere. He said, there is something really different about this track. He said, that just made me, think I'm in a really, really special place. So the races, I think that's the interesting thing, is the internationals are all saying, yes, we want to come here every year, and next year there will be Mustangs there. That's for certain. There will hopefully be some Corvettes, and I think that's probably the thing to push it over the edge. That's sort of the next step, because as I said on the thumbnail, it might surprise people, but when I wasn't at the track, I was staying at an inner city venue, and downstairs at the inner city venue they had what's called a public bar, and I decided to walk in there and watch a bit of cricket on Saturday night, what there was left of it, in both men's and women's. And I spoke to a lot of the locals, and it was really funny that so many of the locals really still have no idea what this is, and they had really strange opinions of it. Like, one guy said, oh yeah, I don't know, like, I go up every October. I'll go up. I wouldn't bother with this because they're just so slow, and it's like, whoa, hang on, they're faster than supercars. Oh no, they wouldn't be faster than a supercar, mate. You had to show him you had to get the phone out and show him that soft, and he was like, bloody hell, that was. But they were all sort of saying that, if there was a Mustang up there, mate, or a Camaro or something like, but particular the teams. That was the thing. It wasn't as much the cars were important, the drivers weren't that important, but if the teams were up there, if Dickie Johnson was up there, if Red Bull Racing was up there, if Brad Jones, if Tickford, if any of those if any of those guys were up there racing, then it becomes suddenly relevant then. And I think that once we start seeing a few of those GT3 Mustangs up there competing, I think you'll see like the crowd will get even bigger.
Great segue, Brett, because the announcement by Ford early last week was crazy incredible. How we've got something to look forward to, obviously, with Cadillac joining where they have across the world. But the Ford announcement, they are just like Toyota's ramping up in Australia, we mentioned, but isn't Multimatic and Chip Ganassi Racing and all their Ford, the development program, and with the WEC and IMSA, and it's just going to be absolutely insane. It's going to be like the 60s and 70s revival. And they obviously won the Le Mans 4 years in a row back in the mid to late 60s. So I just cannot wait. We're just going to have to stay alive a few more years, because the regulations, I think, don't expire. That they're all owned with the hypercar and the LMDH, which is, I think, is their first protocol that they're going to enter with Ford, and the GT3. So to jump onto that program, Genesis have obviously announced it a short time ago. It just surpasses any other announcement in the world right now. I don't really, who cares about the local stuff when you look at all what's going on.
That's the point, though. I mean, it was the buried headline. I mean, as far as Australian media, like even within the media centre, everything was like, oh my God, have you heard the big news? And it's like, yes, I have heard the big news. Ford are coming back to Le Mans. And it was like, what? No, the big news.
No, that's not. No, that other news is only just them piggybacking onto. Probably they realise that Chevrolet have not. Well, yeah, and Cadillac, but Ford have gone massive, and they've probably been watching it from the sidelines too, and think we might want to go down this path and follow the lead here. But that's not. Yeah, I don't. So that's not real news, I suppose. Anyway, because actually, it was Monday. It was Tuesday morning, and I saw your post, and it had already been up for 2 hours. And I was just walking into Steam Packet Gardens. And I thought, oh, geez, I don't even get to look at what's going on in the world for 12 hours a day at the moment. I'll just flip it in as I'm walking into work. And I looked and went, And I saw Zach straight away. Zach Suter, obviously, second in the championship in TCR last year, running a GT4. And I hold up my phone to his face and I said, "Have a look at this." And he goes, "Oh, geez, where'd that one come from?" There you go. Thanks,
Well,
Brett.
a lot of people were asking that, and I think that the problem is there were a lot of very noses out of joint within the media centre. The fact that got out. Now the situation. I'll explain the situation as far as I'm aware of what happened, because there was a lot of anger by some people who didn't know the facts. The story was obviously broken by Mark Fogarty at V8 Extra. And everybody in the sport knew that it was coming, or like a lot of people in the sport at the top level knew that it was coming, because Ford had sent out certain media releases to certain journalists with an embargo saying this is what's being announced, get ready, which people do all the time. I mean, you get it like almost every day. You'll get a thing saying, this media release is embargoed until 12:35 tomorrow afternoon or whatever. This is to allow you to have some time to write your story, to pick up extra quotes, to check on a few things. So it's a courtesy more than anything else. It's not legally binding like an NDA or anything like that, but it is a courtesy within journalism. And the courtesy says, and the ethics say, that you should never break an embargo. Some people do. There are some journalists who just say, it ain't the law. If you tell me, I'm telling my readers, or I'm telling my listeners, or whatever. And that's their attitude. Yeah, I certainly don't. If someone sends me something saying this is embargoed until whatever time, then I'll write the story and then I'll set it. In the old days with Twitter and all the rest of it, or when you had software that would do it, I would set it. Basically, if it said 3 o'clock, at 3 o'clock the story goes up. Not a minute before, not a minute after. The situation with this is where, and I'm sure somebody's getting hauled over the coals about this, is that somebody, whether it was within Ford Australia or Ford Performance in the United States, had sent out these media releases, but they hadn't sent one. They'd sent them out to different, but they hadn't sent one to Fogarty, to Mark Fogarty. Now, if anybody knows Mark Fogarty, he's probably the most experienced, most credentialed, most awarded motorsport journalist in Australia. But he's not with the Auto Action anymore. He's not with one of them. He's now with V8 Extra, which is a smaller publication, a smaller now online publication. And for whatever reason, they might have said no. So Fogs didn't get. This is what I've been told anyway, not from Fogarty, but from someone fairly close, who said he did not get the embargoed information, as neither did I. He didn't get the information. He picked it up from somebody else, and he just basically did it like an old-fashioned journalist. He hit the phones and started saying, "Hey, what's going on?" and put together the story himself. But there were people who were stuck, some of the major players who were very, very, very upset, because they were planning, because this was going to be the big story and it was breaking at this time and they were going to go on, and this was, the stories were ready, the photos were ready, the mock-ups, everything was there ready to go, and they got gazumped. They got
the car was built by Tickford that was on display that got launched all of a sudden, and the car isn't even anywhere near a 888 product. It is a It's just a
Raptor.
It's a
Blanchard.
Yes, Tickford built the car. Blanchard Racing owns the car, and it was on loan to be able to mock it.
Yeah, so that was.
There was still.
Pete?
There was still some light blue. There was still some dark blue BRT colours sneaking through the Red Bull wrap.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have wanted to put it on. It was probably a fairly quick and fairly, cheapish sort of wrap that was happening, and there were lots of sort of computer design concepts up online, and Ford have got them. Like, and the funny thing is, I mean, this is why people are playing favourite, because I am on the Ford Performance Media list, and I checked today just to make sure that I hadn't missed it, but I didn't see anything in terms of any embargoed information. And as I said, if I'd have got that information, I wouldn't have put anything up before the embargo as well. But I was in the same thing as the story was already out by that time. Fogarty's put the story up, and I said, "Well, boy, this is going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons." Now, what I picked up, the interesting thing was what I picked up from people, because there were a lot of supercar people, obviously at Bathurst over the weekend, and what I picked up from people is pretty much everybody's known that this was probably going to come sooner rather than later, and it's basically because Ford Performance in the US have basically, they've ruled out everything. They just said, look, yeah, obviously there's a problem with parity. There's just, we're not on parity with the Camaros. They've now gone to all listed. They've sent cars to America. They've put them in wind tunnels. They've done every bloody thing to say it's, and they've shown that in terms of data, they are as close together as you can humanly get them. So they've gone, okay, well, it's not parity. It's not the rules. Oh, hang on. Perhaps it's some of the teams. Perhaps it's just a case of the guys who are building the Camaro and the guys who are winning the championship. Perhaps they're just a better team, and perhaps we should be with them instead. So that was where that sort of came from. The other interesting thing, which has also been buried, is on the same day and at the same event, Dick Johnson was inducted into what is the Ford Performance International Motorsport Hall of Fame. So, and that I've seen very little sort of that. I only found out today when I was actually on the Ford Performance Media website, where it said, Ford Performance welcomes Australian legend Dick Johnson into its as his legend, his Hall of Fame inductee for 2025. So I haven't seen a lot of that out there, but Dick was certainly.
It was on
I'm
the
going to
weekend.
throw one more in as well to wish list is Sebastian Bourdais keeps racing for a few more years because of the Ford connection he had back in the earlier days to be able to race those LMDH. I hope Sebastian's hangs around long enough. Obviously, he's back driving for Ford again, but wouldn't that be a fairy tale if he does?
Pete, you were going to say?
On Speed Cafe on the weekend, there was a thing about Dick Johnson being inducted into the Ford Hall of Fame, or the Ford, whatever the award was.
Yeah, I forget what it is. It's basically a Hall of Fame, but it's
I think it was on the Channel 7 News up here as well. Either that or it was in the Bathurst 12-hour telecast. They
might have been on the telecast too. I don't know what happened with the telecast this year. It was very obvious from being there as well that they have cut a few corners in terms of that telecast. I think the budget wasn't quite as high as it has been in the past, but I haven't heard any specific complaints. So I mean, you guys watched it. I was, of course, there live. So
I enjoyed it. Absolutely.
I've got some complaints.
MJ, I've got a quick question, Mark. I caught it a little bit with the rule changes, and look, there was a couple of people that have had subsequently gone on quotes on the rule changes each year. And I'm not going to go into fuel saving and all that sort of stuff they did, but there was one little one that came up this year that they got well used, was that the 80-second pit stop, which is mandatory, which is part of the balance of performance regulations, that you could go 1 second either side 3 times in the race without getting a penalty for. There was a team that took advantage of that. Which one was it towards the end there? They were about 79.7 seconds or something.
WRT.
Yep, that's right.
That's what it was. Yep. I thought, what a find.
Well, they were timing it pretty precisely. Like several of the teams were pointing out, they were highlighting the pit stop times each time. 80.1, 80.3, 80.5.
that was incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were certainly pushing right out onto the edge. But I
By
guess
the
yeah,
way, I hate that concept, and everybody there did. All the international drivers couldn't stand as well, because as a lot of them said, look, for things like the Creventic events and all the rest, we've got mostly amateurs, and they're the people who keep the thing going. It certainly helps to have have a controlled pit stop because it keeps things safer. It takes away some of the advantage that the professional teams have got when you've got teams that do it every single weekend and practice and they work out in the gym and they choreograph it all and they do computer simulations and all that. It gives them a huge advantage over the guy who's just me, daddy's mate and mum's friend and my uncle John and all the rest. They all come together once or twice a year and help out in the pit. So that I can see the idea of doing that. I think that the thing that that the teams are saying now is, look, this is this is at the top level. This is part of the Intercontinental GT Championship. It's a global part of a global championship. I mean, this is part of a global championship along with the Nürburgring 24-hour and the Spa 24-hour. You can't get much bigger than that. So this is, in many respects, this is as high as you can get. And they just said, look, it really takes away a lot of the strategy, a lot of the. If you might have found that like the Arise Racing guys may have ended up a bit closer to if they'd have been able to sort of play things a bit differently, they probably would have been a lot closer at the end because when they were gambling on a safety car, they were gambling so they could get in and get out and not lose as much
playing the
time.
regulations in your favour because they're the only team as well too that have to have ovens in their pits because if they don't heat up the rotor in the ovens in the thing, it won't fit over the hub when they come in for their pits. So they need the 80 seconds. Where another one who's not going to, they haven't got that style of brake set up with the calipers and the rotor and the pads. They don't have to have their rotors baked in that. So having a rotor and doing a rotor change is longer for them than what it is everybody else. So basically, no matter what strategy you use on your pits and like that gives you that 80 seconds anyway for this particular event, gives everyone an equal chance on adaptation.
But
from
that's
the
the problem
rules
that's the problem with the car design. The fact is that like as Garth Tander said on the commentary, like he said it really surprised him that he said we've got the quick change rotors and pads. It's all one unit. We can knock it over in sort of less than a minute. And these are the top GT3 cars in the world, and some of them are still doing it like you change the pads on your Hyundai Getz. So
well, I guess that's sort of part of the regulations of how back in the day they made GT3 a more economical option than GT2/GTE.
yeah, that was the idea, but that's now way out the window. The cars are so expensive, and I
Just
think
now,
that's
yeah,
probably the next. I think that's probably the next sort of problem. The fact is that people were talking about like the cost of not just the cost of doing the race, and it was like some people were saying that look, we might be able to put together the money. We might even have the money to get a new Corvette or a new Mustang or a new whatever. The problem is this thing has just taken off so hugely around the world. They're just not available. There's a massive waiting, and particularly Ford and General Motors are not focused like Porsche and even Ferrari are in building cars for the mass market. They're like, as far as Ford and General Motors are concerned, they would much prefer the fact if they could only sort of build two for IMSA and two for WEC of each and sort of pretty much leave it at that and run professional drivers in all of them. They'd be very happy. They'd be very content with that. But as it turns out, the regulations sort of force their hand and say, no, you've got to make this has got to be something that people, that real people can actually buy. Not real rich people, but real people nonetheless. So.
Which brings me to the point. Our friend Jordan Roddy was up there and combined sedans in a Lamborghini Hurricane.
Rita, no, it wasn't his Carro Gallardo, the Rita Extenso.
Oh, good. It could be. It could be. I'm not up to speed with my Lamborghinis, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, I was
But anyway,
unaware.
he finished.
I was yes,
Sorry.
I was in. I didn't actually know that it was. I was in the garage and I actually took some photos of it and was sort of saying, like, well, why isn't this car? Or took some footage to sort of say, why isn't this car, would be more at home in the 12 hour. I actually didn't know it was Jordan until I was up on the top of the mountain on Saturday on Saturday afternoon. I heard I heard the commentators calling his name, and I went, but by the time I'd got back down again, because he was got the support category guys. As as soon as they crossed the checkered flag on Saturday afternoon, it was straight onto the the transporters, and they were out of the place. It was like a
That's all right.
ghost town there.
They didn't even telecast race 3 of the Ferrari Challenge, and they chopped
There wasn't a race 3. They only have 2 races.
what well, race 3 for
Ferrari
the
Challenge only
combined-
has 2 races. And
Okay,
race 3
well-
of combined sedans was on. I watched it.
Yeah, but they cut it in half. The back half, I looked everywhere to find it, but
There was
telecast-
okay, yeah. That was actually an issue with you know how on YouTube there's a time limit you can only run,
no.
and it just happened to be that switch over point happened at lap 8 of the
Yeah, that's why I
combined
thought there was
sedans.
the Ferrari Challenge.
The thing is that
after, but
that
I should say it
YouTube
wasn't there.
that YouTube restriction actually doesn't exist anymore. You can actually now you can. I mean, God forbid that it would ever happen, but if we wanted to, we could just leave this open and we could have this open for the next 6 months. It wouldn't, so as YouTube, there used to be restrictions, but there aren't anymore. The reason that they do it, and part of the reason of us making the change for in pit lane and doing stuff online, is if you break it up into sections, you double or triple however many segments you have, you increase your audience. Because if you have a 4-part race, you have 20,000 people watch part 1, 20,000 people watch part 2, 20,000. Oh my God, we had 80,000 views. No, it's the same 20,000 each time, but
Yeah, you see that in TV broadcast guides too. Like the same event will be broken up into bits. Test match cricket, there'll be session 1, lunch, session 2, and it isn't the test match doesn't run all day. They have 7 or so chunks for their reporting during the day, and it's the same with most sports.
And the same with the television ratings. I mean, years ago I went to a meeting with OzTam, who run the television ratings. This was when Channel 31 actually paid the ridiculous amount of money to get the ratings, and we looked at the breakdown as to how people report. And I said, look, there are figures everywhere. What is the correct way to read these figures and to make sure they're accurate? And the woman from OzTam said, whatever way makes your program look the best. And as I said at the time, if we'd have put our figures, if we'd have reported our figures and our ratings the same way that Supercars was doing it at the time, we would have had 170,000 viewers a week. I'm letting you know we didn't have 170,000. Yeah,
OzTam, we did.
Yeah, we did. But that's it. I mean, they're not lying. They're not lying. I mean, they're just saying, but they're just interpreting. And there is no way to say no. That's not how we interpret the figures. It's however you want to interpret their figures, and you interpret them whatever way you bloody like. So that's where that's changed a bit now because OzTam are no longer there. See, this was the thing. Some of the commercial channels moved away from OzTam because they were saying, hang on, there's times when we're getting beatings. We're getting beaten by the ABC, and that's not on. So we're not going to take these figures anymore because they show that not as many people are watching us as we thought. So
and more importantly, that we can show to our advertisers.
Well, that's the reason,
Exactly.
and that's the
Exactly.
reason that we're on and that I see all the time, and we've been involved in that as well. You look at whatever is going to look best for your advertisers and say, and as I said, we could go there and we could easily say that. Yeah, okay. Our average audience on In Pit Lane at one stage was 52,000 people a week, and that wasn't a word of a lie. That was how many people. If you ran it the same way everybody else did, like for like, that's how many people were watching. Something, Mark, that you might be interested in. Mark, any opinions with the second speedway circuit being closed in southeast Queensland? Do you know anything about this?
Well, of course, that's partially refers to Archerfield, which we lost
Yeah.
going on a second season. We're in the midst of the second season without it now. Lakeside, to be honest, I would have to look up what it's referring to about as a second speedway circuit. Lakeside has had its issues of recent times.
So what's the situation?
So,
What's the ownership situation at Lakeside now?
well, the circuit is owned by, if memory serves, it's owned by the City of Moreton Bay, the former Pine Shire Council, and the lease on the circuit is operated by John Tetley.
It all
John, of
makes
course,
sense now.
John ran Queensland Raceway, of
Right.
course, for most of its life, and when the change of lease ownership at Queensland Raceway, because that is also that's owned by the council down that way as well, the Ipswich City Council. But as with, it's not an uncommon thing. Like Bathurst, for example, the circuit's owned by the Bathurst Council, but some of the buildings on it are owned by others, and it's the same with QR
Yeah, because I know the
yeah,
council. That's why I asked, because I know that the council, one of the local councillors, I think it was in fact the mayor, who put out the fact that the problems are not being caused by us. We are behind. We're 100% behind Lakeside. In fact, the mayor posted shots of him driving his own car out there on at club sprints and all the rest of it. But he sort of said, we are basically we are having some problems in our communication with the management out there, and that sort of now makes 100% sense.
and they have had some ongoing issue. I believe that they had to defend the operation of the circuit in court not that long ago, like a year or so ago, and there's been and part of that's been noise, part of that's been just and I'm trying to be slightly careful about what I say, because there has
Yes,
been some
legal matters.
yeah
So
yeah
well,
yeah
we'll
so
be careful
but
about
yeah
that. We'll
the
see what we can find out, perhaps for next week. Now that I'm sort of back into
but
now we're sort of
Speedway
back into
suggests
things again, but.
Speedway suggests a dirt oval rather than lakeside.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I hadn't heard about the second one. I know there's also some big trouble. Western Springs Speedway in New Zealand. Apparently, there's. I was told basically that was closed, and apparently that's a political bun fight as well between people. Hey, listen, I'm just looking. We're over time already. I knew we'd have a lot to talk about, and we haven't got to anything sort of Formula One related or anything like that.
Just
So
a quick one, too, though, Brett.
Yep.
How about we do it again tomorrow night?
Just a real quick one. I was did my homework today, just a little bit. Do anything we could. Just a quick homework. I did have a look at some of the MotoGP stuff today that's going on, as of interest to us and overall. Some of the Michelin tyre is going to be implemented as soon as possible this year. They started on the front at the end of the new concept, the new upgrade to it late last year. Their back tyre apparently is going to be implemented pretty quickly. I looked at the freeze on the regulations for the motors. The Ducati is still in Tier 1. Honda and Yamaha are in Tier 4. So they're still allowed to keep on developing their engines for the MotoGP bikes, which leads me to the testing in Sepang a few days ago, which involved the 3 Yamaha teams, mainly riders, because Pramac, who had a long withstanding relationship with Ducati, which is hugely important. Also, my background tonight, I'll put my Mercedes, $150,000 Mercedes up next week as my background. I was looking for a second ago. The Pramac team have now switched to Yamaha. I don't know the politics and the stories behind it, but I will do my research on that, even though I did announce it when we were doing Full Course Yellow last year. Through Mr. Miller, who is riding for Pramac for the Yamaha, and Mr. Quattararo, still riding for the Yamaha factory team, and Mr. Elisha Spargaro, all did 157s around Sepang, all within about 3/10 of each other. So there's a little bit of news on the development of those. And if you want to look at some of the other testing from some of the other bikes in the 2 circuits in the last season and Sepang right now, jump on YouTube. A lot of the manufacturers have got some footage of that. So anyway, quick looking forward to MotoGP this year too.
Yes, that's all around the corner as well. So yes, look, it's a busy year ahead. We've got some launches coming up, some team launches coming up. I think this Saturday we've got the Erebus team launch. Probably going to go over to that. I've just got to check that that's okay to go over and film there, and to probably have a chat to a couple of the people over there. So that's coming up, I think, this Saturday. It's not at their workshop, unfortunately, across the road from me. It's down a little bit further at the Young Timers Garage. They're having an open day there, so it is open to the public. Starts at the ridiculously early time of about 8:30, I think, and the actual launch is at 9:30 a.m. I believe that it is being live streamed as well. If it isn't, and we're there, we'll live stream it. So just keep an eye out on the Facebook page, if will, and we might we'll jump in, providing we're allowed to, and providing that nothing else is set up at their end. So that's happening this weekend as well. Slowly they're revealing the new liveries and all the rest of that sort of thing. For what that's worth, it's all very exciting. The new liveries. It's like, it's a slightly darker shade of blue than last year. Hold the presses. But that's about all you can talk about. If there's no major sort of technical changes coming up, then the various shades of blue, red, green, and ochre or whatever are all you got to run with until they actually get back on the track. But they will be testing up at Sydney, and they were hammering that over the local television up at Bathurst while I was watching the cricket. They were really hammering. That was getting a major hammering. So history is made. Come out to Sydney. This the Australia's biggest motorsport. It's all happening in Sydney. Sydney is the place. You've got to be in Sydney. Get out there, and it's going to be at night in Sydney. So
they were hammering it on the telecast as well.
Oh, okay, so here as well. So, so get out to Sydney, because it's amazing whatever is happening out there. The other thing that was there just quickly over the weekend, and it showed that if you build it, they will come. Haven't got all of the details, but over the weekend there was drag racing at Calder. I wasn't able to get there, of course, because I was otherwise engaged, so I wasn't able to commentate there. There was the drag racing at Calder Park on Friday night. Then I think it was Saturday, or it might have been Sunday, they had a sort of a muscle car sort of festival, a sort of a Summer Nats type thing out at Calder Park. Caused absolute chaos. A crowd of over 20,000 people apparently turned up. The roads were blocked. It was a nightmare. Apparently, in terms, it was just so popular, and apparently they didn't expect anything like those numbers. And it really does show that if somebody could just build a bloody proper drag strip out there, they would still get 30,000, 40,000 people to events like the Nationals.
With access.
because with access, and they could do it easily out there. It's if they worked together, it's right by a freeway. If they have like proper off ramps and proper on ramps, and they've got a major train line on the other side, they can put in even if it's a temporary thing, which they used to do back in the 70s. That's how I went to my first meetings at Calder Park at the age of 14 or 15. I don't know whether Richard ever did that as well, but you'd go in and you'd grab the free train, the Calder Park Express, and you'd jump on that. And
Like
I used
you're
to
a
take
little bit
my
old.
little Renault 10.
Well, you're a little. I'm very happy to say, Richard, you're a little older than me. I can't say that about me. What worries me is someone came up on the week, came up to me on Friday and said, "Oh, happy birthday for yesterday. How old are you?" And I said, "Oh, 64." And they went, "Yeah, thought so."
That's, yeah, right. Okay, thanks.
When I'm 64.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
going through my mind a lot on the.
Yeah.
Will you
And
still
they're almost
need
all
me? Will
dead
you still
now.
feed me? Yeah, well, I must admit, just before today, unfortunately, I had some bad news. A school friend of mine, someone that I went on a lot of holidays with, and all that. I was just down the shop, and for the first time in about sort of 6 or 7 years, I saw his brother, and he just came up and he said, "Oh, by the way, had you heard that Peter died?" And Peter Gillingham was a very good friend of mine growing up. We used to sell papers together at the Stanford and play pool and we'd hustle various people at the workers at the pub to get some extra money. I mean, well, Peter hustled them because Peter was, in fact, even as a kid, was a very, very, very good pool player. And I'd sort of, mess around and lull them into a false sense of security. And then Pete would go, right, and go click, 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 click. Thank you, that'll be $10, thank you. $10 back in 1973 was an awful lot of money for a kid, for a 14-year-old kid, I can tell you. So anyway, yeah, so that was shame, but yeah, so many people. But anyway, thank you for joining us again. As I said, as soon as I can get around to it, I've still got that speed. I've got so much to do at the moment. And this was the reason for another reason for sort of cutting back on the show. And now something else has sort of come up. A couple of things have come up actually, and I'm busier than ever. So as soon as I can get the Speedway stuff up, I will get it up as soon as possible. I will then start working on the Bathurst stuff. I will also hopefully get up, if we do Erebus on Saturday, we will get that up as soon as possible as well. So keep watching the YouTube channel. We'll get things up there as quickly as possible. As I said, anything impromptu live, like the stuff I did from Bathurst on sort of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. From the park, God, that's a beautiful park. I've never been there. The Machete Park, I think it's called. I was there, but absolutely stunning. Yeah, absolutely stunning inner city park there. It's a beautiful city. It's a lovely city, Bathurst. It really is very nice.
Nice museum.
Yeah, well, that was the first time that I went to the museum. I've always been way too busy doing other things and got that, and yeah, I just this time, this was one of the advantages of the fact that there wasn't so much happening on the track. Is I sort of walked past and I was going up to have my traditional martini up at Ridges, and walked past, and there was, surprisingly, there was no one in the place when I walked past. In fact, I thought it was closed. I thought, what a silly thing to do to close. There were no cars, there was nothing, and no people, and nothing anywhere. And I opened, and pretty much, there were about 5 people in there. So I walked around, and that'll be part of my postcard from my postcard from Bathurst. Awesome. So that's coming up. As well.
From the edge.
From the edge, yes.
But there's a few of those cars are actually replicas.
Yes, there's quite a lot. Well, thankfully they have. Most of them did say that this car has been, or some of them are the actual cars, but there were totally like the John Goss winning car. That is apparently the shell of the, but that's all of that was all that was left of the original car, and then the museum have built up basically what is underneath it now. But they are at least upfront and honest about saying this is a replica or this is a tribute to the car that has been restored or built to the specifications of the day.
In I saw one of the pictures. I think it was Mark Walker who's been posting a lot of pictures on his Facebook recently. But
he must not have a lot. I don't know how he is constantly out. He is constantly taking pictures every single weekend. He is clearly. I don't know. I don't want to start any rumours or anything. But is there a home problem or something, Mark? I mean, he is never home. But I will say this, Mark. Mark Walker takes really, really good still pictures, and I mean really good. I think he's one of the best photographers out there, especially in some of that atmosphere stuff that he got. Yeah, look at some of his shots and go, that's quality. That's really good stuff. And he does some terrific photos from museums and that sort of thing.
So I got it up early. A big thank you to the silver arrows that's sitting behind my head that I picked up and had to transport around the place on yesterday down in Geelong. So thank you very much to Zach and the team and everyone at Mercedes for that little piece of motion behind me.
When I brought Mark Walker up just now is because one of the pictures had the 67 and 68 Bathurst winners side by side in the museum. And the first Ford V8, the first Holden V8, I don't know for sure that whether either of them are replicas or not, or partial rebuilds or whatever. But although the 68 car's been at the museum for a little bit though, hasn't it? Like it was the car that Craig Lowndes famously almost had an accident with on a parade lap one year, and. They've got a really good. The thing that got me was I was surprised. One, at how big it was. I was surprised at the extent. But obviously, being that it's at Bathurst, it's very, very, very heavily touring car centred. It's there's a couple of open wheelers there. There's a couple of sports cars. There's a fairly reasonable but small speedway. There are lots of bikes. There is a huge and very impressive. Bikes don't take up much room, but
that's true.
Bathurst has Bathurst, of course, has a much stronger history in motorcycle racing than many people appreciate.
Yeah.
They've got a lovely tribute to Greg Hansford there as well. I don't know whether it's permanently there or whether it's something that's there for a short time, but they've got a lovely tribute to Greg Hansford there. They've got Wayne Gardner's World Championship winning Rossman's Honda. That's sitting there in a big glass case, and that's very impressive. The only thing that was missing, there's only one acknowledgement of drag racing there, and it's a VW powered bike. From drag bike from the day, and they were very popular at one stage in the 70s and 80s. Very supercharged VW powered bikes were all the rage. But there's one of them, but there's no drag racing stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say they do. Even a funny car would take up twice the amount of room of what a normal car would. So
they wouldn't get it through the door.
Yeah. Well, they had a lot of them out, so they had a lot. I know John Hindhoff drove one of the Cortina GT 500s in the track to town, and he was absolutely over the moon about that. I mean, the fact that he got to drive such a famous sort of car, and with its English history and all the rest of it, he was absolutely thrilled with that. So
Well, Mark and Pete would have seen it. He and Crailsey, Hindy and Crailsey did a little segment on the telecast for the Sunday where they went to the museum and had a bit of fun and games.
Yeah, Hindhoff was sitting in Brock's 05 from '84 and working the gearbox,
making sounds, noises. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it's a great play, and as I said, it's just a beautiful city. And once again, I caught the train out, and the views on the train are lovely. But I must admit, the downside of the weekend, and I mentioned it on the live stream, the really bad stuff was once again the transport getting to and from the track. Uber was impossible. I mean, it was just, we are looking for a driver. We are still looking for a driver. We will get back to you in 10 minutes about a driver. Your driver is 45 minutes away. Sorry, your driver has cancelled. So there was that happened all weekend. In the end, the taxis were not a lot better. Especially that's why I didn't actually go out for the start this year, because I tried to organise, a taxi out there for that time, and the taxi driver said, "Look, mate, there's probably 5 people here, and all of the taxis are all booked out." So that was real, and they did.
You can't help it when you've got half a dozen weekends a year, and you go from 5 taxis to 50, and there's just not the resources. So
Uber could have had brought, like for something like they could have brought some, but the worrying thing was there were buses out there, but no one knew where they were. There was a bus stop here, and you waited and waited and waited. And I got one on the Saturday morning, and I said, "Where's the timetable?" "Oh, there isn't one, mate." "Well, how often do you run?" "Oh, dunno. Depends on demand." "Right, so if I wait there at the end of the day, what time do you run to?" "Oh, couldn't tell you."
It could be a long wait, mate.
Well, it was. I ended up going back. There were about 6 people there. We all went to the bus stop. We waited for like a good 20 there. One of the people there, who was actually a local, was ringing the local, trying to get through to see, I'll see if anybody's, we can try and find out. We asked officials, we asked all sorts of people, and in the end it was just, we go. In the end, and that's another reason why in the end I walked back from the track back into town. According to Google, it takes, from the spot that I was standing, it takes 47 minutes to walk the 3.5. It took me a lot longer.
Yeah.
47 minutes to walk back, and I was absolutely, especially when you're carrying, a camera and tripod and all the other shit on your back.
I think
was working on country timetables.
I think the example for on foot was set by Peter Bull.
What was that? I didn't.
Runner.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, well, I felt that. Going up that hill, up Panorama Drive, it was like, what am I doing? I'm on the phone going, "Please taxi, please Uber, somebody, somebody rescue me." By the time I'd got sort of towards the end of William Street, I just sort of looked down and went, "Oh, it's too late now. Bugger, I'll just walk."
You should just climb the ridges and have a couple of drinks for a couple of hours, and you would have got one of them.
That's the thing. I did not have my. You might remember, Doc. Last year I went to Ridges,
as I do every year for a few hours. I do.
And ordered my traditional martini, and the gentleman behind the bar did not know how to make a martini, so I had to show him how to make a martini. This year I went and asked for a martini, and the man behind the bar said, "Sorry, mate, we don't sell them."
Great.
What sort of a bar? And when they had cocktails, they were pre-mixed. They were on a bloody tap. Pre-mixed at a swanky hotel like that. Good God. And they were like 20. Oh.
So anyway, I know it's getting late. We've got to go. But same extension to that story. A few of the boys went out on the drinks on Sunday night after we had our particular massive race as well too. I didn't get on it. I just had a beer. They were doing espresso martinis, but not just with the Villanelle beans ones. They were doing shaved caramel on top, which is a different concept as well.
Yes, that's a bit. I haven't had one. That's a bit of the rage at the moment. I'm quite fond of an espresso martini. In fact,
with the caramel shaved, not the Villanelle beans traditionally.
Well, no. As I said, I haven't had that one. It's a special drink, and I have one every year on Melissa's birthday, because that was our last drink drink together was an espresso martini, and so every time I see and I've seen a few sort of espresso martini with caramel, but I'll probably stick. I will have it at some stage, but I'll stick with the original and the best. I think. Just go with the go with the regular. That's on tap now too. You see it in all the pubs now. Espresso martini on tap. It tastes as vile as it sounds.
Get them fresh. Yep.
Yep, if you're going to have cocktails, you make proper cocktails. Yeah. Okay, everybody, we have now gone into our 90 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to donate, if you'd like to keep up those donations, and everybody at the Royal Children's Hospital would like to say thank you for your time. I believe that Bruce Mansfield and John Dart, despite the fact they're both dead, are going to come in and host the next 2 hours. And then later in the night, Philip Brady is going to be here.
I'll tell you, Philip Brady retired last week.
Oh, finally! Do you know that? We're losers. We haven't caught up for so long. I've got this again. Yeah,
30 years. He hung up the hands last week.
Philip Brady is the one. Everyone says, who is the one person, the one celebrity or something? If you could have like a sit down long interview with, who is your show business hero? My show business hero and the person is Philip Brady, and I'll tell you why. Philip Brady cannot sing. He cannot act. He's a terrible interviewer. He can't tell a joke. He has no perceivable talent at all, and yet he has been in the Australian television industry and radio as a huge success since he was 17 years old, and now he has just retired. So, Philip, congratulations. You are a dead set legend. Congratulations.
And that was a chance for me then, too.
Exactly. I mean, if Philip... And I'm only 64. So 3AW, if you're looking for a replacement of a silly old codger, I am now available. I am in the right age demographic, have been for several years now, and I can easily say, yes, I remember back in '68 when Billy Thorpe played the Northcote Town Hall
with the Aztecs.
Well, this is before the Aztecs, I can tell you. Let me tell you.
Lion.
Hey, listen, we'll get going because I was just about to start off again because believe it or not, there was a poster on the thing at Bathurst. There was actually a concert featuring Lonnie Lee, Little Patty, Jade Hurley. Like all these people who were big before even I was born, and they're still performing. It's spectacular.
No, the real people, not the tribute band.
No, not tribute. No, the real thing.
We have to have ambulances lined out the back, don't they?
Yeah. What's in the riders? Green Smarties? No. Walking frames and Depends.
Well, that was about to say the frigging green room would be half full of bloody walkers, wouldn't they? Anyway.
And don't forget the refibs. At least a couple of refibs.
Defibs?
Yes, defibs.
Anyway,
yes.
Right,
let's get out of here. We'll see you next week on Full Course Yellow. Yeah. Catch you later, everybody. See you later. Bye bye.
Yeah,
I'm pressing the button now. Pressing the button says end.